big hello and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. 2020 is an extraordinary year on many counts. Humans are caged, and while they've been caged, there seems to have been an awakening of our cumulative conscience. Black Lives Matter, which began as solely an American movement, seems to have traveled across the seas and become a burning issue right here in India. However, here the movement seems to have taken an odd turn. The movement at home has forced larger corporations to act quickly on their respective fairness creams verticals, which is not breaking news when I say has been supremely profitable. Caught in a conundrum of sorts, large multinationals such as Johnson & Johnson, Unilever, L'Oreal, and Nivea, just to name a few, have all acted. And just to give the audience some sense of what each one have done, I'm going to quickly recount what some of the major corporations have done. Johnson & Johnson has decided to stop making and selling Neutrogena fine fairness products, as well as clean and clear fairness product ranges. Do note that these products were only available in Asia and the Middle East. Hindustan Unilever rebranded its skincare brand Fair and Lovely as Glow and Lovely, and the men's range will now be called Glow and Handsome. L'Oreal declared to drop words such as fair and fairness, white and whitening, light and lightening from its products and communication. Nivea, on the other hand, is reviewing its products and its marketing strategy to determine implications of changing perceptions for its several products and portfolios. Well, some may look at it as a positive step and really a step in the right direction, but what seems to be completely lost in this narrative is the real introspection. Introspection on two counts, one of us as a society, and secondly, that of brands, which today claim that they have a higher purpose than just profitability. Two extremely candid personalities joining me on the show today to bring to the fore the deep, dark, and ugly truths that no one has the courage to talk about, simply because everyone has their own agenda. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Anuja Chauhan and Santosh Desai, both industry veterans and both individuals, no need for any introduction, but today joining me as social commentators and as individuals who say it as it is. Thank you so much, Anuja and Santosh. Truly a pleasure having you on Brand Equity. First things first, Santosh, if I could ask you to give me your headline thoughts on what we've seen transpire, when this movement in India, started taking some momentum, and the fact that it has forced multinationals to act in a rather knee-jerk reaction to appease consumers. How do you think, A, we as a society have handled it, and B, how have corporations handled it?
Clear that, the impetus for doing whatever has been done has not come from all the protests or all the sort of the sentiment that is resident in India. I mean, for many years now, the activists and other people have spoken out about the fact that, there is a double standard involved here. When, companies claim to be doing all the noble things that they do, and yet, have not backed away from products like these. So to that extent, and yet the change has not happened because of the pressure from India. The change has happened because of a movement in the United States. And in order to look good to an international audience, because this question is brought up repeatedly in an international forum as to how can you justify selling something like this in India? That is the reason why this movement, this shift has taken place. So I think it's important to first recognize the fact that while the move has happened in Asia and in India, it is not because of an Indian sentiment. It is because of a global imperative. So I think that's number one. And number two is that, yes, it is true that it's a large business and there are business considerations for corporations like these, but you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot claim to be a corporation or a brand that has a higher purpose and then make a cosmetic change of a name and expect and want to sort of retain the same volume that you do, because truth is, glow as a word is pretty much a surrogate for fairness. So you want to be seen to be doing the right thing without doing the right thing. And I think that's what's happening.
Fair enough. I think two important points brought out by Santosh here. One is a sad truth that this entire movement has been brought about by Western countries and not really by our own internalization of us as a society, which is really quite sad. And B, my question to you would be taking a cue from what Santosh has said, saying that, yes, the effort has been made, but the effort is really tokenism and appeasement at the most superficial level. My question to you would come from the side of brands. If we're a society that celebrates fair skin for marital purposes or for other purposes, whether it be casting in a Bollywood or it be generally appeasement of the male gaze, where a fairer skin human being has always been treated with more privilege than a dark-skinned human being in India. Is it wrong for brands to capitalize on that?
Yeah, no, I think Santosh is absolutely right. But on the other side, I'm like, you can't expect more than a cosmetic change from a cosmetic industry. But I clearly, American Black Lives Matter, third world mental health and confidence and self-esteem of women from Southeast Asia and third world countries clearly doesn't matter. Otherwise, this change would have happened a long time ago, because this is something that women have been tabling and organizations have been tabling for ages, right? That this is rubbish. You cannot equate fairness with loveliness. So that's a given. I think Neutrogena seems slightly more sincere, because if they're actually doing away entirely with an entire range, that means maybe they're taking it a little more seriously than a cosmetic change like, if you're not saying fair and lovely, then they're saying glow and lovely. And I think that corporations, you can't, this is, you can't do this. And they've been doing it for ages. Like initially it was just about marriage. So they would be saying that because your girl is dark, that means that if a man marries her, then his children will be dark. And therefore, on the marital market, this woman is not such a price catch. And then when
isn't that mirroring the truth of our society anyway? That's how we think.
But the point is that it's one thing is about, there are all kinds of dark truths. That doesn't mean that you go out and create products specially for them and feed that insecurity in people and that fear in people. And instead of taking them to a place of brightness and light, you're making the future. They're basically saying, if you're dark, your future is dark. So first, it was just about the marriage market. Then when they were criticized for doing that, they then started saying that if you're fair, you can become a cricket commentator. If you're fair, you can become a television anchor. If you're fair, you can become a doctor. You can become an airline pilot. So now it's not just the marital market. It is everybody at large. So you're worried about fairness when you're going into a job interview. That is what Fair and Lovely has showcased more recently, that the girl has the confidence to go and zap an interview or fly a plane, which has got nothing whatsoever to do with your complexion. I mean, Sonali, would you be more confident if the pilot walking onto your plane was very fair? It's completely illogical. It makes no sense. So I think that the hypocrisy level is just rising and rising. And with this change in name, it has just like reached its zenith. I mean, it's at an all-time high.
But let me bring you back to the question. And Santosh, as when you look at products and product creation, you essentially look at an opportunity in the market, and if you are opportunistic because you are a company that's looking to make money, and if there is a need, you create it. So my question remains that is it fundamentally wrong for a company or companies to basically leverage the need of the market? If we as a society, propagate this, why are we blaming corporations?
I'll answer that in two ways. For the first part of it is the fact that, when corporations set out to sort of, don a mantle that is extremely noble, and where they increasingly argue, as indeed some of the companies in question here do, that, they exist to make our lives better, and that they're, beyond profit, their primary mission is to improve the lot of humanity. And I'm not exaggerating this, or I'm not making this up. I mean, this is exactly what is, when you talk about purpose-led sort of marketing, this is pretty much exactly what they claim. So I think one of the reason for feeling particularly kind of aggravated as far as this is concerned comes because of the double standards. So it was one thing when there was a sort of peculiar kind of honesty to advertising and to marketing earlier, where you were clearly opportunistic, and that's the mantle. Those are the clothes that you wore, and that's what you pronounce to everybody. That's what we are. Now you actually want to present a reformed kind of a veneer without actually making any changes. So that is, I think, the first part of it. In an earlier time, marketing was opportunistic and transparently so, and there was a peculiar kind of honesty in that. The fact that that in so many different categories, particularly when categories were being built, the fact that consumers were made aware that your breath was bad, that your odor was bad, that your skin was not shiny enough, that your hair was not long enough. I mean, this is traditionally what marketing has done, is to make these, is to sort of place the product in the context of the shortcomings of perceived shortcomings of consumers. And the other, I think, question is that while it is true that society certainly there is a sort of a bias for fairness in India which exists in society, but that is also true for, say, a communal polarization. There is communal polarization in society. So does it mean that brands have the license now to drive a wedge between communities? I mean, there are so many social evils that exist. Does it give license? I mean, somewhere you draw the line. In some cases, you say that, this is acceptable. And at some stage, you say, no, this is not acceptable. And I think increasingly today, that's the discourse when it comes to race and color.
That makes sense. And I think that completely answers the question on whether corporations should be held responsible. Taking it forward, Anuja, we've seen what companies have done. Some, like J&J, have gone the whole hog and said, okay, fine, we will eliminate this vertical completely. We've seen companies like Levers who've changed their name. We know players like L'Oreal will not use offensive words like lightning, fair, blah, blah, blah. Do you think, since this entire movement was caused in Western countries, and then we seem to be somewhat profiting from that movement there, and it's not really something that was born at home, do you think this will be enough as an exercise of appeasement to Western countries? And how do you think we at home are reacting as consumers? Do you think our reactions are good enough, given the fact that we got this great impetus thanks to our peers, on the other side of the globe? But the fact is, are we doing enough to take this forward?
No, of course we're not. I think what we have done may be enough, J&J and this Unilever and all that. It might be enough to appease the Westerners, because they don't really understand the nitty-gritty and the many levels of hypocrisy and doublespeak that we have perfected in India. So it might be enough to fool them, but it's not going to fool any auntie out there with a daughter on the matrimonial market. Everybody knows and gets gori, chickpea. These are all good words. This is what we want. So I don't think anyone in India will buy it. But I mean, so definitely it's not going to work here. It's a very, and now we're doing it in everything. We're doing it in, we beat up minorities, and after 4 days we say, bad, Munna, shouldn't have done that. And nobody really believes that, right? So politically that is happening. All kinds of people are still being, so it's lip service. And I think in India, we're smart enough to recognize lip service when it is put out there at us. There's also the whole incident with the South African cricketer, and him sort of, shaming his team members and saying, you guys were calling me by this name and so on. So I think that these little things add up. And unfortunately, we are the kind of people, unless something is fed through an American system, we don't take it seriously. So maybe it could be positive in the sense that if the Americans are saying this is uncool and bad, so maybe it really is bad. If Americans are saying brown is beautiful and the West is saying brown is beautiful, then maybe slowly we might start to actually believe that.
Do you think going forward, Santosh, the names will be changed and things will be as is and status quo, and we will forget this subject because it's trending now, everybody's discussing it, just like Me Too was trending a few years ago, and then there's been no real follow-up on that, and we've forgotten about it and we've gone on with life and we have newer topics to talk about. Is this just one of that? And will companies like the ones I've mentioned do their little gig and their little dance and we'll be happy and then life will go back to normal? Or do you think somewhere this is a stirring of a bigger movement, even if it means that it's a slow process?
I think in this particular case, I mean, if I was to just separate two things, one is the global sort of concern and interest in this subject. I don't think that is going to diminish. I think, the unfortunate truth is that, in a unfortunately, in a few months' time, another you'll have another African American sort of a person held up and probably killed by police officers in the US. And this is a recurring. This is not going to go away overnight. And I think there is a real impetus internationally when it comes to Black Lives Matter and this subject. And I don't think that is going anywhere in the short term. Which also means that the pressure on companies, and the other thing is that because companies more and more are going to claim this higher ground on brand purpose, they will be subject to much greater scrutiny internationally. And it will not matter whether that their actions, whatever they are taking, regardless of which country they are acting in, they will be pulled up if it does not conform to the standards that they profess for themselves. So I think I don't know on the ground whether in India fairness as a subject or fairness products will start dwindling in sales. I personally am not very hopeful of that happening.
You've seen symbolically they trying to do something, Anuja. Do you think we as consumers will demand for more? Do you think we as consumers will force, let's say, Glow and Lovely to become Just Lovely with a changed formulation? Do you think, because the fact that they did this itself is a big deal? Going forward, do you see that happening in the next coming months? Because unless the momentum is pushed right now, nothing's going to change.
See, Sonali, the thing is that what do we want, right? Do we even want this? Companies like Unilever don't do anything without a massive amount of research. They meet tons and tons of young girls, teenagers, even younger than teenagers, older women, all of whom are saying we want that little beauty ritual. Just because I'm not a particular, I don't have a lot of money to spend, doesn't mean that I don't deserve a beauty ritual. My little 5 minutes of me time in front of the mirror where I apply my cream and I feel like some heroine in a movie, and it does something for me. So it is something that women seem to want. They're asking for it. They're asking for it because of, the internalized concept of fair being better and patriarchy and the caste system and all those massive, huge things, right? So women want it. You can't say they don't want it. Maybe richer women who buy products like Dove, for example, don't want it, which is why in a higher category from a brand like Unilever, you will see Dove's campaign for real beauty, which is all about embracing your flaws and this and that. Is the same Unilever, which is doing that same campaign, the same people who are doing Fair and Lovely. So marketers eventually do a lot of research and they give you what you want. So this is what we want. So it's a question of, and it is what we want in that SEC, in that category, at that price point. This is what women are asking for.
Tell me, Santosh, would it be more acceptable if, let's say, brands did not take on the higher purpose mantle, did not guise themselves in the fact that their existence is because there is a need gap in the market, and they're essentially, producing products of that need gap, and essentially their end game is profitability. If they were truthful about their real motto of existing, would that make it easier for you to digest if they then have said that this is our motto and this is the need, and hence we have these products which may be unacceptable to you as the elite and the intellectual, but hey, this is what largely the country wants?
They're not doing it because suddenly they've had a change of heart. They're doing it because there is a new consumer that is emerging in the West, who and the millennial and beyond are looking at consumption, and they want consumption to be more meaningful. They are asking these questions of brands. The brand's belief system gets factored into their decision whether to consume something or not. So this is a response to a consumer shift. So they are doing exactly, marketing is doing exactly what it did earlier, which is that it is looking at what consumers want and it is fashioning itself to it. The difference is that what consumers want in the West and the way consumers are looking at consumption in the West, it's a post-consumption mindset. In India, it is just about we are getting into a consumption mindset. So I don't think these are strictly, that's the gap. The reason why in India there is still the large base of consumers want fairness, and they don't have any great ideological issues or any compunctions about wanting it, right? They don't have a problem. So I think that's the bind that they are in, that they recognize that the consumer in the West needs something like this, needs them to say, and unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that you cannot just say, you have to act on it. And I think they're being held up to that standard. And I think that's where they're, in a sense, trapped between a professed belief and a need in the West versus a need in India. You will be forced to make shifts in India, but we are the pawn in this, right? Right. We don't determine anything here. It is being determined by dynamics in the West. Eventually, which way it will go, it will depend on how it pans out in the West, not on us.
That is indeed sad when you put it like that. But, luckily, I mean, in this case, we are pawns for the right cause. So be it. Having said that, this brand purpose has been heavily talked about over the last 5 years. Anuja, you have been a solid advertising professional. Many of these brand purposes, I'm sure you were largely invested in and possibly even coined. Do you think it is time for, let's say, brands as the adopted brand purpose as a different layer of brand perception and brand marketing and brand positioning? Is it now time? Does it make sense? Because, they are being called out time and time again. Is it now time for them to, maybe have a more honest approach, more authentic approach to, to life, to their consumers, to nations at large? Do you think that'll serve a larger purpose for them?
Yeah, well, there's two things. I mean, firstly, something like this, I think like maybe we can look forward to a brand that isn't burdened by having a huge international presence. You might see a Patanjali Gori cream coming out, because they don't have anyone to answer to, and everyone agrees that fairness in India is valued. So there's like a huge chance for local players or whatever. But I mean, I do think that might be a time to return to honesty in advertising and, be that very simple, clear. If you use this, your teeth won't smell. If you use this, your clothes will get bleached, without then saying, I don't necessarily have to ladder up daag achhe hain from just stains on my tablecloth to like stains on someone's reputation after they have been violated horribly, and these larger causes that we pick up. Because now I think that maybe there are enough people speaking up for things like that, and brands always look at, we are tainted and we are opportunistic, and whenever we go in, there is a crisis meter call to say that, look, this issue has come up. How do we become part of this conversation? How do we sort of go in there and sort of hijack it and put our little brand in because our brand fits in here? So maybe this whole high moral ground, which we frantically keep trying to claim, we should not be doing that. Instead, just come back to simple, honest statements like, if you use this product, this daag achhe hain, and just limit it to the tablecloth. Versus, because I think again and again you're being cut out for your hypocrisy, you're being cut out for double speak, you're upsetting people from all kinds of communities and all kinds of things. So I have seen a certain pushback. Like earlier, brands would aspire to have this greater, much larger thought than just their line, and now I think the way the environment is and everything is so politicized, it might be smarter to not take that great position, to not say Desh ka India and Desh ka namak, and just be like, this is a very good namak, it is iodized and please have it, and you've been having it for generations. So it might be a time to scale down from there, because sometimes it creates a lot of trouble.
Are you in agreement, Santosh, that maybe it be time for brands to get off their high horse and just proclaim the reason of their real existence?
Well, I certainly think that they need to reconcile this, because I think there are brands that actually do begin with a higher purpose, not very many, but there are brands like that. I think the problem comes when you try and superimpose on brands and companies that have been around. The problem comes when you live in an ecosystem, a financial ecosystem where you are valued on a completely different basis. No analyst says, how many people did you supply water to in rural Maharashtra? I mean, no analyst, ever values a brand or a company because of that. So the dichotomy is that the fact that you are professing something which the ecosystem in which you exist does not value. I think you're better off, either actually living and not just pretending, for a higher purpose, or scaling down this rhetoric. See, it's not as if laddering up is a problem. It is simply when you ladder up to the point where you say that I am looking at. Because what you're doing here is you're bringing your noble intentions into play. You are saying that buy me because my heart bleeds for you, which I think is the ultimate form of dishonesty. See, as long as you are saying anything else, till you stopped short, or till you brought yourself into the equation and your intention into the equation, you are it's fine.
Fair enough. On that note, I hope marketers and brand owners have heard this conversation and take this in the right spirit. And these are tough times for them too. And hopefully they will, recalibrate and introspect in the truest form and become, honest marketers, or at least make that attempt. On that note, thank you so much, Anuja. Thank you, Santosh. Always a pleasure having both of you.